Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a bit of an interesting video. We got no kind of formal intro today, and that's because we're going to be doing a season preview of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So for the majority of this video, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be looking through the depth chart that the Bombers have for this season, not just for this coming game on Thursday. This was published by John Hodge on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And so this is just kind of what I'm going to be using. I'm going to have it on the screen so you guys can see exactly what I'm looking at here while we chat about this. Now, the Bombers this year are in a bit of an interesting situation in the sense of that there's a lot of talent that is no longer here. And there's a lot of guys that are kind of stepping up into different roles. There are guys that are coming back off of injury that we hope we can keep healthy. So we're going to go through all that. If you haven't already, make sure you guys leave a like on the video. And if you guys could subscribe, would mean a lot. A good portion of the viewer base isn't subscribed, but we appreciate your support nonetheless. And then also, if you're looking for league-wide CFL coverage, make sure you check out my other channel that I do with my co-host Rick, Canadian Football Central. Link to that will be in the description below. Now, let's get into the offense. So for the offense, your starting quarterback is none other than Zach Collaros. Now, for those who are not aware, Zach Collaros will not start in their first game of the season against the BC Lions, the home opener for Winnipeg. This is due to a one-game suspension that he has, due to not him failing a drug test, but failing to report in for a drug test. Everyone's a little bit confused about this, as it's not like Zach Collaros hasn't done drug tests before. He was claiming that he got a text and he ignored it thinking that it was a scam or whatever. So my understanding of this is probably that the CFL reached out to him in a different means than they normally would, which is really strange. I feel like this should be clear. And as much as you have 48 hours to perform your drug test, you're only given 2 hours to respond to this drug test, which is you could easily put your phone down and, well, do anything. You could read a book, go bowling, whatever it is for 2 hours. And not notice it. So very, very little, minimal wiggle room on that. They actually were originally going to suspend him for 2 games, but then when the Bombers kind of stepped in being like, okay, 2 is a little like, seriously, 2 games for this when he's given 2 hours. So the CFL ended up only suspending him for 1 game, but it will be the first game of the season nonetheless. So behind Zach Collaros is Chris Streveler. Now Streveler, we're worried about that arm, in preseason he looked okay, but we've seen very, very mixed results. So I imagine that with them, they're going to try to run the ball a lot more. Now, we're talking about the offense. We need to talk about someone who is not on this depth chart, also known as the brand new offensive coordinator for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This is Jason Hogan. Jason Hogan steps in. This is his first time as an OC for Winnipeg. Now, I'm actually just going to search it up in real time to see what he has done. So this will be his 4th season working with the Bombers. He's served as a running backs coach for Winnipeg, which, we're talking about best running back in the league, Brady Oliveira. We'll get to him. So him stepping into the OC role, very curious to see how this goes. I'm excited for it. As much as Buck Pierce was very, very good with us, kind of in that big game, he kind of struggled in the sense of not being able to, not properly utilizing him, at least in my opinion, a bit of the talent that he had. But there's a lot of things that are good about him. He very much kept it simple when they needed to keep it simple. So at the end of the day, I'm okay with us getting a new OC, as I believe when you have someone with the talent of Brady Oliveira, you can put any OC in that role and you're going to be able to have some success. But hopefully we can see still some continued success out of the receiving core, especially now that we're given some, we're in a bit of an interesting spot with that, as we lost a lot of guys, but there's a lot of guys still here. So Chris Streveler is your backup. Again, very much more of a running quarterback. He's a guy that you'll see in short yardage a lot for Winnipeg. The arm is kind of the concerns we have. And so hopefully with his start on Thursday, he'll have that figured out by game time, but we will just have to see. Now, our 3rd and 4th string are a bit of an interesting situation here, as we have Terry Wilson, who was the 3rd string for the Bombers last year. But then behind him, we have, I'm going to be honest, I'm probably going to mispronounce his name. I don't know the proper pronunciation. I've heard it like 5 different ways. Artipose? I'm just going to roll with that because I don't know the proper pronunciation. If you do, let me know in the comment section down below. Just kind of sound it out for me. I would really appreciate that. He was very impressive in the preseason. Very pleased with him. From my understanding, the Bombers themselves are very, very pleased with him. Terry Wilson as a third string is okay. I'm not going to lie. I prefer other options that were out there. I prefer guys like Shea Patterson. I prefer guys like Jake Dolegala, just signed by the Hamilton Tiger Cats. But overall, I'm not. I don't have a problem with him being third string. I think if he was just your backup, that's where I'd maybe kind of raise an eyebrow. But as a third string, that's okay. Artebos, again, he was decent, so I'm okay with him in the fourth string. But now, so that is our quarterback situation. Michael Chris Ike at fullback. I've been completely fine with him at fullback. Really not much for me to say about him. Just kind of fits that role well. Now, running back situation. This is where it's a little bit interesting. So the Bombers have Brady Oliveira as their number one running back. Of course you do. He's the most outstanding player in the CFL last year. He is your 2 consecutive years most valuable Canadian. This is your guy that you build the franchise around. When Zach Caleros is gone and someone else comes in to replace, because we got one more year out of Zach Caleros in terms of this year and next year, as he signed that extension, realistically, then we're looking for the replacement. Brady Oliveira is here to stay. This is a guy where, we don't see any longer term deals in terms of 4-year deals really in the CFL. I would be totally okay if Brady Oliveira would eventually get that kind of big deal with some term. But the more interesting part here is the backup, Peyton Logan. So Peyton Logan, running back for the Calgary Stampeders last year, comes over to Winnipeg for a few reasons. Lucky Whitehead retires from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which means we have a spot open at returner. Peyton Logan, in addition to being a running back, is a very good returner and has been. And so I imagine that Peyton Logan is going to slide into that role. Now, for those wondering, he is currently injured. He is not healthy. He will not play, most likely, in the game against the BC Lions. However, hopes will be that he then plays week 3, which is against BC, except over in BC Place. But Peyton Logan, pretty pleased with him as a secondary. As much as I liked Johnny Augustine, again, when Ted Gavea moved to Hamilton, there was a lot of Bomber talent that went with him, and Johnny Augustine was just a piece of that. Peterson, now the third string. I'm not going to lie, I'm okay with Peterson here. However, I was more impressed with Quentin Cooley. Quentin Cooley is on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers practice roster. But Peterson as a third string, not really anything I'm complaining about. I just thought Cooley was kind of the better of those two. But that was the decision that they went with. Now, we're going to talk about the offensive line. After we talk about the offensive line, we're going to go into the receiver core. For the offensive line, we're going to go from left tackle all the way out to right. We got Stanley Bryant coming in there. Stanley Bryant, we're not talking about a young guy, but we're talking about a guy who is consistently just being fantastic. Stanley Bryant, even in his older years, even though he's not getting that Offensive Lineman of the Year award, you're still talking about a guy on the top of his game. And whenever you see the offensive line crumble, it's not him that's going to be crumbling. Now, coming in at left guard, this is the position that is arguably the most interesting. And the reason why I say this is because this position last year was occupied by Liam Dobson. Liam Dobson was a former first-round pick of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He was, I want to say he was like second overall from Texas State. When Ted Gavea, for assistant general manager of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, now the general manager of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, went over to Hamilton. Liam Dobson, another one of the pieces that went with him. So Dobson leaves. So now the question is, now we got a hole there. Who's going to go in? So the challenge was really between Eli Wallace and Vanderpool. And I'm not sure who, and so this is where when we see the depth chart released for the Thursday game, we could see someone, I have no idea who we're going to see here. On this depth chart published by John Hodge, Vanderpool is who he slides into that spot. I have no real preference of the three of them. I'd be okay with the Bombers kind of testing that out and seeing, who's going to perform the best. At center, we have Chris Kolinkowski. He's been there for a few years. No real complaints about him. Last year I was a little concerned a little bit with some kind of trouble through the middle. But again, I haven't ever seen like any issues with the snaps or whatever for the most part, except maybe like one in like preseason when he's still kind of getting back into it. I used to play center in high school. I understand the difficulty of being able to consistently snap like that and then get your hands up for the block. It's not an easy job. It's really not. So I empathize with him a little bit there. Pat Neufeld at right guard. We're talking about another lineman who he's been at it for a while in the CFL. I realistically see the Bombers probably replacing him in the in the next 2 years, I imagine. But he's been okay. And so I just hope that he can be decent for the Bombers this year. For those wondering, the Bombers were, I believe, fifth in the league in terms of the amount of sacks given up. So basically right in the center. We're talking about 19 leagues, so fifth, right in the middle. So not the best offensive line in the world, certainly not the worst. Out at right tackle, we have Eric Lofton. Now, Eric Lofton is also dealing with a little bit of injuries. So as much as someone like Peyton Logan, I can pretty much confidently say will not play Thursday. With Eric Lofton, it's a little more confusing as we just have a little bit less knowledge about his injury. So we could see Kevin Randolph slide into that spot. It looks like he's kind of being the backup setup for Eric Lofton there. So we might see him in the Thursday game, game one for the Bombers this season, or we might not. We might see Kevin Randolph. So either way, hopefully Lofton is able to get healthy, as again, we're talking about the guy who was last year was put in there to replace Yoshi Hardrick, which is big shoes to fill. Last year kind of so-so, hoping that we can see some improvement this year. At the end of the day, as the season goes along, just want to kind of keep getting better and better. So that is our offensive line for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now we get into the receiving core. We're going to go again left to right. We're going to start with the X receiver, which would be Wheatfall as your starter right there. Which, firstly, very pleased with that. Wheatfall was fantastic in the preseason, especially when we want to talk about that second game where the Bombers really started to get it going. He had fantastic chemistry with both Caleros and also with Chris Strevler. And so this is a very good thing, especially as I think Wheatfall, he dealt with a little bit of injuries last year. I just want to make sure I have that right. I just want to quickly get his stats here. If we're looking at, is it Sarek Wheatfall? I never knew how to say it. Yeah, last year we're talking about 7 games played, 1 touchdown, 273 yards, 18 targets, 13 receptions, with an average of 21 yards per catch. So he was very good for Winnipeg. Just keeping him healthy was a little bit of a concern, which we're going to see here on a bit of this receiving core. But Wheatfall, in his time in, looked very good. This year looks arguably even better, in my opinion, from what I've seen from him. Very excited to see more of Wheatfall. He's backed up by Dylan Mitchell. Not going to lie, I thought Myron Mitchell might get a little bit of a chance here, but he would end up being that kind of on that last cut for Winnipeg. But overall, as a backup, I don't know a ton about him. We'll just kind of have to see if he gets his opportunity. Which then brings us to the Y receiver, Dalton Schoen. Now, Dalton Schoen was a big point of contention. As with the Bombers, they kind of were left to either re-sign Kenny Lawler or Dalton Schoen. Now, Dalton Schoen is a little bit younger. However, as much as Kenny Lawler has had some injury issues in the past, Dalton Schoen was out almost the entirety of last season. If you're Winnipeg, this is something you cannot afford to have. This was a guy making $200K plus. It's an expensive contract. It's a lot of money to play to a guy. It's a lot of money to pay to a guy who wasn't really playing. Now, which is why I was thinking that they should have kept Lawler and dropped Schoen, assuming what they ask without knowing kind of what the asking price is. However, now knowing the contract figures here, I understand it a little bit more why the Bombers went with Dalton Schoen, as Kenny Lawler is making, I think, almost $300,000. I believe he's making around $280K, something around that, and Dalton Schoen is making around $180. And so knowing that, I can definitely see why the Bombers went with Dalton Schoen. And Dalton Schoen is a fantastic receiver. Just keeping him healthy is the concern, as he is your deep ball threat here. I'm glad that Wheatfall has shown that he can kind of be a bit of that as well, especially if we do have any injury situations with either Schoen or, I guess, Wheatfall. It's nice seeing a second guy be able to do that. But Dalton Schoen, excellent guy. Just got to keep him healthy. Which brings us over to the R receiver, Nick Dembski. We're talking about a guy who's been here a while, Winnipegger, born and raised, and as long as he holds onto the ball, we should be good. This was kind of a problem that we had with Nick Dembski near the start of last year. But it was something that he eventually did figure out, as every time he would get the ball, after he had fumbled it like at least 3 times, I think, he would get a catch and he would just clamp down on it, which, it's funny. It looks silly in the sense of it totally looked like overkill, but I have no complaints. Do what you got to do to hold on to the ball and drive the ball forward. And he got kind of backward to where he was. And so I'm curious I hope we see more of that, Nick Dembski, which then brings us over to the Y receiver. Stearns coming over from Saskatchewan. I want to take a look a little bit at his Saskatchewan statistics here. Sorry. Jareth Stearns played 2 seasons in Saskatchewan, so not very old, only 25 years old. 11 games played 2023, 12 games played in 2024, so didn't play a full season for either. Averaged about just under 500 receiving yards with his 2024 season. Targeted 60 times, 39 receptions on that for 492 yards, for an average of 12.6. Overall, okay, not going to lie. The targeting reception ratio, I'm not exactly crazy about. Hopefully, with him being with an elite quarterback like Zach Collaros, he's able to get that success rate up. But definitely a guy I think that there's more potential for than Saskatchewan was really able to fully utilize. So I hope we see more out of that for Winnipeg. Then we go to the Z receiver, where Kevin Clarcius is going to be your starter. Kevin Clarcius was a bit of an interesting one, as he wasn't incredible, but he certainly wasn't bad either. He had his moments. He had his games that were better. His average wasn't great. He averaged 11 yards. However, he was good in terms of being a possession receiver, as he got 32 receptions for 40 targets for 352 yards. And again, we're talking about another young guy. He's only 25 years old. So this is where the Bombers have a bit of potential here, is with having such a youthful receiver core. You can sometimes get a guy who can kind of just take off in the middle of a season. I mean, last year, if we look at injuries, that gave a guy like Ontario Wilson an opportunity he wouldn't have had. If Schoen and Lawler stayed healthy, I don't think we would have gotten the Ontario Wilson breakout that we did. And so the Bombers lost a bit of receivers, lost guys like Kenny Lawler, lost guys like Drew Wolotarski and whatnot. And so they're going to have to try to replace those. Lost Ontario Wilson to the NFL, to the New York Jets. They're going to have to try to replace those within. And so sometimes giving these younger guys a bit of an opportunity, you can occasionally see a guy just blow up and be a big success. You want to know how the Bombers got Dalton Schoen? That is how. You gave a young guy a chance, and he showed why he belonged in the Canadian Football League. So Clarcius, hoping we could see a bit more from him this year. I'm not expecting a 1,000-yard receiver, but if I could see him hit 500, I'd be pleased. And if I could see that average go up a little bit from maybe just north of 10 yards to maybe closer to 15 to 20 or whatever, just improvement in that regard, I'd be very pleased. And then Corcoran is the backup there, and I'm not going to lie, I really do not have much knowledge of this guy, which is why we're going to go to his stats here. Joey Corcoran. And Joey Corcoran is only 24 years old. He is younger than my brother, has not played in the CFL before. This is where I'm actually going to see if I can find his football database page. Joey Corcoran. So, if we're looking here, he was born December 14th, 2000. Yeah. So he played 3 years in the FCS, so college football, for New Hampshire. And overall, his average per year was between, in his best year, well, actually, this doesn't really count. He had 1 reception in his first year, and he got 23 yards, so his average is 23. So it's not really a good frame of reference. He got 3 touchdowns in his second season, 1 in his third season, with ranging from 670 yards down to 324 yards in terms of yards received. Played a bit more in his second year than he did his first, and averaged between 10 to 11, it looks like, or 11 to 12, yards on average. So we'll have to see how it goes, as this is very much a new face that the Bombers are bringing in. as the backup at the Z receiver position. So that is the offense. Now let's get to the defense. We're going to start with the defensive line going from left to right. Starting out at the left side, we have Willie Jefferson. We are talking about an elite tier defensive end here who has been in Winnipeg for a while and has made it clear he is going to be here until he retires. He's moved his entire family here from Texas, and he is a fan favorite for a reason. Willie Jefferson is the locker room guy that you want. He is the leader on the field that you want. And he has been a crucial part of this team, and he will continue to be in that role. Had his struggles last year. However, I don't believe that was as much of his kind of fault in the sense of that majority of the offenses we were going against, if you recognize last year. So for a while he had Jackson Jeffcoat with him, which would be over here. Jackson Jeffcoat, had Jackson Jeffcoat on the other end as your other defensive end. Jackson Jeffcoat, not as good as Willie Jefferson, but still a formidable defensive end, forcing the offense of the other team to really have to pick and choose how they're going to defend against what we call the bookends. Last year, it wasn't the same. We had Garbutt, we had Celestion Haba. They were not bad. They weren't Jackson Jeffcoat. And so the issue that they ran into is that they could just put double coverage on Willie Jefferson, have one guy cover Haba or Garbutt, and they're probably fine. Whereas in prior years, they would maybe double team Willie Jefferson, but then Jackson Jeffcoat would get him in the backfield. And after Jackson Jeffcoat would get him a few times, they put the double coverage on him, well, then Willie Jefferson would get it done. And so having the dual threat is important, and we're going to get to that. But Willie Jefferson, not just good at making defensive tackles, reading the play, also very, very good at knocking balls out of the air. We are talking about a tall individual. The amount of times I've seen him swat that ball down and kill a play where it stands. Excellent job. Very pleased to see the return of Willie Jefferson at defensive end. Then we have our two defensive tackles, starting with our nose tackle. So this will be the guy that if the Bombers are running a 43 base or a 4 linemen, 3 linebackers base, you'll have your 2 defensive tackles. However, if they're running a 34 base, so 3 defensive linemen and 4 linebackers, which Jordan Younger's kind of switched it up a little bit from play to play. This is your nose tackle. So this is the guy that no matter what is going to stay in. Who is it? It's Thomas the Tank Engine, Jake Thomas. He is in there. This is, again, an elite defensive tackle who's been around the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for a while. Unlike the Saskatchewan commentary team from the Bomber preseason game, no, he is not exactly a young player or a young rookie, whatever the hell they said. He is 34 years old. But he, again, if you even want to, actually, if you go to Canadian Football Central, and you see the player interviews we've done with Miles Fox, that we've done with Haba, that we've done with others, the praise of Jake Thomas has been a point of discussion. He is a guy that not only is very good in the role he is in, he makes the players around him better. So I'm excited. And he's got 3 guys backing him up. And so that would be Cameron Lawson. Got injured in the preseason last year. We thought that he might have potential at the other D tackle position, but never got to see that due to his injury. Tanner Schmeckel, in the preseason, after a ball came loose, picked it up and went down to the other end, getting himself a touchdown. Not sure if he had gotten a touchdown in the CFL before, but certainly got one in the preseason this year, so good for him. And then Cornelsen, which I'm going to be honest, I really don't have any knowledge of him. So he is our 4th string. On the other side, the right side defensive tackle, we have Jamal Woods. It looks like he's going to kind of be in that starting spot. But I can imagine this is something that maybe the Bombers rotate a little bit and see who they like. Jamal Woods, though, gets a starting spot. He had kind of been fighting for it last year. He gets his chance now. Devin Adams backing him up. I was very pleased with Devin Adams in the preseason. There was one penalty that he took that some didn't like. To be honest, I didn't think it was very problematic because, again, if you look at what led up to that play, you can see, as much as you can give him a penalty there, he could have given the other guy a penalty. Anyways, no one knows what I'm talking about besides me. That's fine. But Devin Adams, I thought, had a relatively decent preseason, and so I think we could definitely see him get some reps at the defensive tackle position. Which then brings us onto the right side, which is James Vaughters. James Vaughters is getting brought in from Calgary. And James Vaughters is pretty decent for them as a defensive end. And I think the Bombers kind of saw the importance of bringing a guy in that could kind of give us what we kind of had with Jackson Jeffcoat, those bookends. And so if we look at last year, he played all 18 games, 32 defensive tackles, no special team tackles, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. This is a guy that's hard hitting, has been around in the league since 2017. He played in 2017, 2018, didn't play the next few years, at least in the CFL. So he might have played down in like the Alliance or down in like the XFL, USFL, UFL, whatever it was. Came back in 2023 for 2 more seasons with the Calgary Stampeders. This is his first time in the CFL outside of Calgary. 31 years old, 6'2", 259 pounds. We're talking about a guy with some decent potential here to be that bookend in Winnipeg. So that's kind of the hope that we're having for James Vaughters, which kind of finishes us up for the defensive line, which then brings us to the linebackers, which there's not a huge change here, at least at the starting position. And the reason why I'm saying this is because obviously there is the absence of Adam Bighill, the man I actually have on my jersey here. Adam Bighill was a fantastic linebacker for the Bombers. It was a crucial piece in the Grey Cups that they got in 2019 and 2021 respectively. I'm not surprised that the Bombers did not re-sign him. Now, I'm not sure if they made him an offer and it was low or if they just chose not to. Adam Bighill is not formally retired, but I don't see anyone signing him, so it's most likely that he's moving on to future endeavors. But with Adam Bighill, in his later years, at least, in the last 2 years, it has been a problem keeping him healthy. And so because of that, certain guys have gotten the great opportunities. Actually, if we want to talk about the starting middle linebacker this year for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Tony Jones got a big opportunity. And honestly, he fit very well into that role. He did a lot of what Bighill provided for us. And Tony Jones has also been very good for the Bombers on special teams. You may or may not recall last year, Bombers punt that ball down. Jamison Sheehan, decent punt. Tony Jones comes down, lowers that shoulder, absolutely runs him over, clean hit, straight to the chest, ball comes out, they pick it up, go all the way to the end zone. The Bombers, in 3 consecutive weeks, got touchdowns off of special teams. And some of them were from punt returns, but Tony Jones was very good, not just in his role as a middle linebacker, but in other facets of the team. He was good. So, and again, he played a lot with Kyrie Wilson and Retta Cramdy, which are your starting Will and Sam linebacker for the Bombers this year. So as much as he didn't formally have that spot with Adam Bighill kind of being there but being injured, but because he was injured so much, this is not a huge change for the Bombers, in my opinion, just in the sense of he's had a good amount of time in that role. But going from left to right, as we will properly do, Kyrie Wilson, starting weak side linebacker for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, followed by Ayers, Shea, and Cadwallader. Oh boy, I mispronounced that one bad. I know it. But overall, I think with the linebacker core, and there's a lot of backups here as well. Tons of guys that the Bombers were very, very excited about, I guess. And some of these guys you'll also see kind of rotate in and out of the secondary. This is just kind of something the Bombers do. Guys like Brian Cole did that. Brian Cole now over with the Hamilton Tiger Cats because of course he is. Because the Hamilton Tie Bombers are the team that they have over there in Hamilton now. But some of the interesting backups, they bring in Jonathan Jones from Toronto as the backup to Tony Jones. He also played a little bit on the outside linebacker for Winnipeg, a little bit in the preseason, just kind of not like in their depth chart, but they would just kind of throw him in here or there. So I'd be curious to see. He played a bit of special teams, Shane Gauthier as the third string for Winnipeg. I'd been okay with Shane Gauthier in times that he went in, just as long as he's not like kind of a long-term solution. If he's not your starter, I think in limited facets, Shane Gauthier is decent. And then you got Wheats and Novak behind him, just not a ton of knowledge that I have about them. At the Sam linebacker position, we have Retta Cramdy, followed by Griffin, McConzo, and Smith. Retta Cramdy, you're talking about a hard-hitting outside linebacker, does very well on those outside linebacker blitzes. There was one game where he had like 3 or 4 tackles in the backfield for an outside linebacker, so I was very pleased with him. Griffin, decent backup for him, and overall, not a lot of complaining I can do with this linebacker core. Which then brings us to the secondary. Now, with the secondary, we're in a bit of an interesting situation here, as obviously we are missing the loss. We are grieving the loss of Terrell Ford to the Edmonton Elks. He was going to go play with his brother Trey. It was bound to happen. And so this means that the Bombers now are going to need to recover for that loss. I think Evan Holm has a breakout year. I wanted it last year. We got Terrell Ford instead. I think this might be it. Like, I feel like we can get it from him. I feel like Holm and Nichols, they're the ones that got it in them the most. However, Bonds has been decent. But Bonds, so if we're talking our corners, going from left to right, we got Bonds. Bonds has been okay. I've had my issues with him last year in the sense of there were some plays where where the Bombers are in zone coverage and he kind of looks like he's going through the motions a little bit. But then there's been some plays where he's very much shut down some pretty dangerous opportunities. Followed by Vival behind him. Not really a lot of knowledge on him, so I can't really comment on it. At halfback, we got Dietrich Nichols. I was very pleased with him last year. He fit very well into that Jordan Younger systems of defense here. And so I got no complaints about that. And I thought he was basically Bonds, but more consistent. So I was pleased with that. At the safety, we got a bit of competition here as Parker looks like he's in that starting spot. I'm curious to see though, as we brought in Haggerty. So, and I'm trying, is he Montreal or Ottawa? He's one of the two. We're just going to search it up here. Josh Haggerty. Played, actually, I'm screwing that up. He played for Toronto. Then last year he played for Edmonton. And then he came over to us. My apologies. Played a lot of time on, although it looks like in Edmonton his role was basically special teams. But yeah, he is listed here as our third string. Then we have I believe it's Nick Hallett, because we used to have Nick and Noah. But it looks like Noah is no longer on the team, and Nick is in that spot. And then we have Kelly as the fourth string there. So curious to see exactly who gets the time at safety for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this year. At halfback on the right side, we got Evan Holm. Again, I believe there's more that you can get out of him. I've been a big fan of him, and I don't know. I got the itch when it comes to Evan Holm that we can just get more of him. I searched something up and it just went away, and I'm not sure why. But then on the right side corner, we have Marquise Bridges. He played for us last year. Played only 8 games, had 7 defensive tackles, 1 forced fumble, 28 years old, so not exactly young, but certainly not a old vet by either. So this is a guy where I need to see more out of him. I think he's going in that Terrell Ford spot, and so I don't expect him to be Terrell Ford, but I expect him. I'm hoping in that Jordan Younger systems he can be a decent piece and a reliable piece to the point where he's not just getting beat every play, because having a good secondary is really, really crucial in a league with just 3 downs of football. So all in all, I want to know what you guys think here. And I was about to wrap up the video, but then I realized, why would I do that? That would be silly. And the reason why is because we have long snapper Mike Benson. He's been here forever. He will be here forever. We love him. He's great. Sergio Castillo as kicker. No complaints there. Very pleased with Sergio Castillo. And I think he's one of the best kickers in the CFL. He's fantastic. He's consistent. He's everything you want in a kicker. Again, I think the only game where he wasn't getting the kicks that he wanted to last year was probably the first game of the year where they had those microchip footballs they were trying out, which was literally only for the Winnipeg Alouettes game, and then they got rid of him for the rest of the year. But he was great. Broke a CFL record last year for the most 60-plus yard field goals kicked in the single season. He had 2. Before that, there had only been one person who had done this. But Castillo last year got 2. Honestly, I have so much confidence in Castillo. If the Bombers are like, if they are, let's say they're 65 yards out. And I'm saying, when I say 65, I mean like even they set up and they put and they get ready to kick the ball. And if he were to kick a field goal, he'd be kicking from 65. I would be confident in the Bombers attempting that from 65. I know that is longer than the current record, but I'm not going to lie, I'd love to see Castillo break that record, as I think he's got it in him. But overall, very pleased with him. Then we have Jamison Sheehan. Jamison Sheehan, in prior years, has been just kind of okay. It's gotten better. I was very impressed with Sheehan in the preseason. He looks like he has improved. Seriously, he had just an absolute boot in the preseason. And he was kicking the crap out of that, really pushing that downfield and giving the defense a lot of field to work with that they'll then have to defend. And if they're able to put the Bombers in good field position when they get that drive back. Was very pleased with Jamison Sheehan. As far as coaching staff that we're looking at, I'm just going to talk about offensive, defensive coordinator, and of course our head coach. Jordan Younger, great last year. Took a little bit to get going, but once he did, man, he was just... The Bombers' style of play really, really incentivizes them to get a lead early. As if they get a lead early, Jordan Younger will take this game and he will lock it up. He will suffocate the other team for the rest of it. This is exactly what happened in the preseason. If we want to look at that second game against Saskatchewan, Bombers, really, really high-tier offense to start the game. The rest of the game was just suffocating Saskatchewan. That was what Jordan Younger did, and it was successful, and he did it last year, and I'm hoping we could see him do it again. Offensive coordinator, Jason Hogan, again, just we need to see that playbook. As I was talking to my brother, and he said that Jason Hogan, for the interviews he had, just wouldn't say much, and I'm like, well, you know what? It's not much to say. This is his kind of opportunity to get going and to show what he's got. We're all wondering what the playbook looks like, because I'm going to tell you, you don't see it in the preseason. No, every coach runs 3 plays in the preseason. They're not showing any of their specialties, none of the fun stuff. And so I'm excited to see the fun stuff from Jason Hogan. So at the end of the day, I imagine my head coach Mike O'Shea for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers was involved in that hiring, and in O'Shea we trust, as he has gotten the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to 5 consecutive Grey Cup appearances. Obviously, everyone talks about how they lost the last 3 and whatnot, forgetting that this is not like it's a team that never wins. They won 2, and then also there's not a single team that has come out of the West in over half a decade because of people like Mike O'Shea and the success that he is able to bring to this team. Grey Cup's in Winnipeg this year. I will be there in person at the game, and let's hope that Osh is able to get us back to the big dance. So, got a big season ahead of us. Bombers start with a 0-0 record, so the work needs to be done to get us there, starting with our Thursday game against BC. Video will be out on that after the game, and then we'll be I'll be doing full coverage of it this season, both here and on Canadian Football Central. So make sure you guys check that out if you have not already. Again, like, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet. And we'll see you guys next time.
Can they take the lead on this drive?